So there's been over 100 movies I've done in this retrospective. I've made it from 1973 to 1984. So I was 11 years old. Um, I was at this age where I couldn't go, I wanted to see movies so bad. I mean, when I was a kid, I just loved movies, absolutely loved them. Um, Going to the theater was such a treat, but it was so rare. It had to be an enormous blockbuster. It had to be Star Trek or Star Wars, which were, as a kid, I could beg enough to go see those movies. I think my dad and grandmother could tell, they could tell what I needed to, what they couldn't get away with not letting me go see. They would have to hear about it every day. Um, and Splash is one that as I aged, I would always hear about it. I would always think about it. And as I got older, I became less and less interested. Um, and the only thing I remember, it could only be my memory, but and it was when how sometimes you have thoughts and they're explicit words in your mind, and other times it's not exactly words per se, but maybe more like impressions. Like I would see, I don't know if it was my imagination where I would see Daryl Hannah swimming towards New York. And I just remember not with explicit words, but thinking, what is she going to do in a city as a mermaid? How are they going to tell a story? And that kind of whittled. I think I was starting to have those thoughts around the early 2000s about this movie. Just kind of, what kind of story could you possibly make out of this? This was a big one, particularly for this retrospective. Sorry, I got to grab the coffee. You know that. That's why I'm going to take time on this one, even if I've got zero views. I'm gonna take my time because this is the whole point of the retrospective. The biggest movies are the ones that left like made I really wanted to see, particularly in this time period, and two, capture that cultural. Is it Milieu? Is that what it is? Milieu, that of Milieu. That's probably the Kentucky way you say it. Got tumped over to the Milieu, but I want to feel that culture again. That seems so alien now, and which makes these movies very open to criticism. This one is so big. Wait till you see this. The zany professor sent me notes. That's huge. That is huge. I'm not going to spend that much time on this, but I did have a couple things that I just wanted for posterity to capture. So this was a big one for me. Now, unfortunately, the first 20 minutes is nothing but pointless setup. And when I say pointless setup, I have to tell you, I really mean it. It is pointless. It's just like, oh, John Candy's character does this. Okay. And it's like, oh, he's kind of a bad boy, but it doesn't pay off. And you knew it wouldn't pay off. You're just watching it going, it's not going to pay off. I'm going to try to avoid spoilers if I can. And Tom Hanks' character is a good guy. Okay. He's typecast that way. And Eugene Levy, that is the most typecast comedian ever. If you've seen Eugene Levy in a story, and I've seen a lot of Eugene Levy, he is the same actor. He's the same character in everything that he does. It works though, I don't mind seeing Eugene Levy. Actually, when I was very young, probably in the 70s, I stayed up, I believe it was Friday nights, and I would watch SCTV. It would come on our local channel in Louisville, Kentucky. I'd watch it. I'd be up in the middle of the night watching SCTV as a kid, and always liked it more than Saturday Night Live. When the DVDs came out, I bought them and watched them till I couldn't watch them anymore, and still watch select scenes. Um, and if you ever hear, man, that blown up real good, that comes from SCTV. There's a lot of little things that seeped into the culture that a lot of people aren't aware of. And this has some of these SCTV alums. But in this first 20 minutes, the only thing they could manage comedically, and really through almost the whole movie, was slapstick. Now you have Tom Hanks, Ron Howard, two major SCTV stars. In fact, John Candy even at this time was the headliner. And you think slapstick? I couldn't help it. I was like, wow, that's really disappointing. Now, as I was watching this, I couldn't help my mind wandering, and I thought, what if they sequeled this? What if I had to sequel this? What would I sequel it with? I came with an idea, all right? Well, the Zany Professor did. Or was it my idea? Splash 2, Meet the Parents. Now, that's the Hollywood title. And I would make people in the trailers think, oh, he's now gone to meet the parents with the girl, right? Oh, no, no, no. It's much more insidious than that. What it is her family is part of a esoteric order called the Esoteric Order of Dagon. And they migrate every year to a village called Innsmouth, where they meet family landwalkers that run a hotel. And Tom Hanks' character realizes that he was always one of them. This, of course, comes from H.P. Lovecraft and his best story, in my opinion. That's very controversial, Shadow over Innsmouth. But the whole time I'm watching the movie, I couldn't help it. I was changing the dialogue in my mind, where instead of them trying to figure out if she was a mermaid, they were trying to figure out if she was a citizen of Innsmouth. She was just covering it up. It was really fun to sit there and think about it that way. And that's not a good sign, by the way. And now this is the thing. Now I've criticized the film for being a little bit too slapstick. That is not to say there aren't funny scenes. This movie has funny scenes. I don't want to get into spoilers, but I'll just say there's a scene that has to do with she has to say her name. That's very funny. There's a scene where she's eating lobster that's actually really funny. And John Candy has a very John Candy moment when him and Tom Hanks, where you just see how funny John Candy actually is. And where he's speaking Swedish. Him and Hanks are speaking Swedish together. Well, it's really not, but anyway. And it was John Candy being genuinely very, very funny. And that was one of the only times. The rest of the times was, again, just physical humor and not funny. But it did have some laughs. I will say this. There's something else that's a bygone era about this film. This film wanted to entertain its audience. And I do appreciate that. And actually, at about the 55-minute mark, they do something that it just took too long to get there. At the 55-minute mark, they begin having Tom Hanks and John Candy talk about this sort of mysterious girl he's in love with, where she came from. And they're putting the pieces together, and they're not quite able to figure it out. And the audience is going, well, they're starting to figure out she's a mermaid, and they don't. And I was like, okay, you're an hour in. And I think what happened is, to the producers, this was very, very obvious that this should be her background should be a mystery. But it really wasn't, because you were trying to figure out what the movie's about. And it just spends so much time just spinning its wheels in the mud that it didn't ever quite get there. So all right, to move along here with my notes and just trying to pick up the pace here a little bit. I'll just say that because they were trying to entertain the audience, the question then becomes, okay, you kind of start cheering for them, right? I wanted them to entertain me. And the truth of the matter is, they were just moderately successful. Now, I'm going to talk about one other thing before I wrap this up. The similarities to this and Starman are insane. And it's not just because I just watched Starman, although that has to be part of it. And actually, I had some similarities to Firestorm as well. Not Firestorm, Firestarter. Firestorm is a very real movie that maybe I'll do a review of one day. But like Starman, there's this sort of unjustified, I have to get back to the sea in 6 days. Was it 6 days in Starman as well? Or was it 10 days in Starman? It was like a literal few days with no explanation. Same thing here. Absolutely no explanation. I have 6 days to get there. And lo and behold, by the end of the movie, who's after her? The military with their zoologist, who should have been considered a cryptozoologist, but whatever. And played by Eugene Levy. And in Starman, it was a SETI guy, which is hilarious, by the way. That would have been awesome if they brought the SETI guy from Starman in here. Look for a mermaid. That would have been great. Anyway. And so they're, after them. And that's how the movie ends with, I don't want to spoil it, with them having to deal with the military and deal with her in the 6 days before what? Shit, we don't know. It's just got to get home and can't stay any longer. I found out later, I don't like to look at anyone else's reviews, anyone's analysis of movies. I try to avoid all that stuff all the time. But sometimes it's unavoidable. And in this case, I found out there were cut scenes that would have explained this. I don't think it would have enhanced this film, so it's fine that they were cut. But anyway, so then at the very, very end, they're swimming and the movie pans over. And I'm not kidding you. This is a little bit of a spoiler. It pans over into a map painting of a very Lovecraftian Cyclopean city that is apparently deep in the Atlantic off the shores of New York. Oh, I was dying laughing. I was like, oh, this is setting it up for my sequel, Siskel and Ebert. I'm going to do a video on them eventually too, because I think they're amazing. And I want to talk to them how I think that they really shaped a generation of moviegoers. They surprised me when they said, what do they do when they watch a movie? How do they do their reviews? And they both said the same thing. They said, I see how it made me feel. I don't watch movies that way, but I had to say, when I had to finally decide what I'm going to rate this movie, 1 to 5 stars, I kept thinking this was a 2-star until I got to the end, and I had to give it 3 stars. I had to give this movie 3 stars because it actually did entertain me, and I did feel for the characters, and it did take me back to the 80s, and I really like that. Okay, I'm going to respect your time here and wrap this up. I hope you enjoyed this, whoever you are that got a chance to watch this, and I do appreciate your time. Thank you.